I didn't originally plan on doing a whole episode about MTV, but it was super influential in its time, so I think it makes sense to kind of learn a bit more about what it was and where it came from. The basis of MTV came from a project launched by Warner Cable called Cube, but it was a two-way interactive cable TV system.
How is it interactive?
At the time,
I guess all cable is interactive. You choose what you want.
No, this is different. We'll get a little bit more into it.
You stare at the TV and the TV stares back.
Yes, it's a scratch and sniff TV.
You stick your hand into the TV and you take out the chocolate bar.
At the time, Warner's cable division was tiny. The head of it, a guy named Steve Ross, thought it could be massive, especially if he could figure out a way to stream Warner movies directly into consumer homes. Inspired by something in Tokyo, Jeff started to build something that was designed to change the landscape of cable television into something interactive. It was first launched into a couple thousand homes in Ohio, and the initial Cube service debuted with 30 channels, including pay-per-view movie channels, regular broadcast channels, and community channels. One of the community channels was built around a show called Pinwheel, which was a kids show that became the first show aired on Nickelodeon when it was founded.
Oh, cool.
Another one of the community channels was called Sight on Sound, which basically aired concert footage and songs and allowed watchers to vote on their favorites. That channel would eventually become MTV. I think Cube, it was hard to really nail down what it was, but it was just this massive remote that had buttons on it.
Oh.
So while you were watching, you could press the buttons and interact with it, almost like the trivia shows on Netflix where you can choose an answer and then the thing changes based on that. But super primitive version of that.
I forgot that happens.
MTV's original format was created by Robert Pittman, who would eventually be the CEO of MTV. He started a 15-minute show on a local New York City channel in the late 70s. But credit for the idea also has to go to a former member of the band The Monkees. He foresaw how important music videos might be long before anyone else really did, and he pitched an idea to have a television station air music videos 24/7 with video jockeys instead of disc jockeys. Well, basically this idea was just radio on television. It's the same thing radio stations have been doing. You just put it on TV with music videos. And he called it Pop Clips. But when Warner launched the idea, they changed it to MTV, or Music Television, and officially launched on August 1st, 1981 at 12:01 a.m. The channel opened with the words spoken by John Lack, who was one of the creators of the channel, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll." Then
That's awesome.
Then the opening credits rolled, and then they played the first music video, "Video Killed the Radio Star" by the Bugles. The format was pretty simple. It basically copied radio. The VJs would introduce a music video and banter about music news between the songs. Occasionally, the screen would be black for a second or two, while an MTV employee inserted a tape into the VCR. The impact, especially on the younger generation, was immediate and massive. They initially targeted the 12 to 34-year-old age group, but quickly...
That's such a big age group!
Yeah. But they quickly discovered that the 12 to 24-year-olds dominated their audience. Within 2 months, record stores were selling albums by artists that the radio stations were not even playing, but MTV was, like The Human League and Bow Wow Wow. Well, at the time, there were not a lot of American artists making music videos. There just wasn't really a point in doing it. Very few people would actually watch them. So MTV had
do it because you want to.
Yeah,
That's what artistry is.
That was basically the point. It wouldn't sell a record. There was no YouTube. There was nowhere to watch these music videos. MTV had a heavy rotation of UK artists because channels similar to MTV had existed in the UK for several years, like a show called Top of the Pops that did feature music videos, but also did live shows. They weren't the same format, but occasionally they'd play music videos. So there was more use in UK artists doing it. At the start, MTV kind of struggled to get off the ground. The reservoir of available music videos was very shallow. Cable TV was still something new and too expensive for a lot of households. The idea of watching music videos seemed so foreign to their audience. But a few years after launching, they expanded their network to include R&B artists. And then Michael Jackson's Thriller came out, and that album really showcased how powerful the music video could be as a promotional tool for an album. So that video was basically a movie. It was directed by the guy who made the Blues Brothers movie. It was released to great anticipation and immediately entered into heavy rotation on MTV. The video helped the album achieve an incredible success, eventually becoming the best-selling album of all time. It also became the best-selling videotape of all time. After MTV would play the video, they'd announce the next time that they were going to play it.
That's awesome.
And recorded audience numbers 10 times greater than they would normally had every time it played.
That is so cool.
The video and the album helped transform Michael into an international superstar. After MTV gained some success during its initial heyday in the 80s, people quickly took note of the impact MTV could have on an artist's career. It helped launch the careers of people like Madonna, Prince, Cyndi Lauper, and Duran Duran. Studios saw the commercial benefit of MTV and started to put money behind creating music videos, which launched the music video as an art form in its own right, and a lot of people who got their start directing music videos went on to direct full-length films and have massive cultural impact, like Spike Jonze and David Fincher. For most of those early to mid-80s years, MTV stayed pretty solidly in the pop and rock genres, which makes sense. They were focusing on popular music in the youth culture, so that was all heavy metal and new wave and some R&B. This format went hand in hand with new wave artists who started to utilize video techniques and make the imagery as important as the music. In 1984, they produced the first ever MTV Video Music Awards. It was an immediate success and became their biggest audience day every single year. It was conceived as a competitor to the Grammys and was billed as the Super Bowl for the youth. By 2001, receiving a VMA award was actually a really big deal. But with the emergence of streaming and the downward trend of MTV recently, it's getting to be less of a thing.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who cares about the VMAs.
Yeah. By 2019, they were reporting record low numbers and no A-list musicians really cared all that much about it. But at the first ever VMAs in 1984, Madonna performed her smash hit Like a Virgin, which has been called
Madonna.
one of the most iconic and unforgettable moments in pop culture history.
Yes.
The Beatles also won a Vanguard Award for their pioneering work on the music video format. You Might Think by The Cars somehow beat out Thriller to become the video of the year.
That does not make sense at all.
It doesn't. Cyndi Lauper won for Best Female Video, and David Bowie won for Best Male Video. In 1985, entertainment powerhouse Viacom purchased MTV from Warner. The changes were immediate and massive. Instead of just a freely rotating playlist that would last for a VJ's shift, music videos were packaged together by genre and aired over blocks of time. So essentially, MTV now had different TV shows for each genre, like Headbangers Ball for heavy metal, 120 Minutes for alternative rock, and Yo MTV Raps for hip hop. Soon after that, reality shows and game shows started to appear in the MTV lineup. MTV shifted its focus away from music to more youth pop culture in general.
Yeah, like Flavor of Love.
I think that was VH1, but yeah. Also in 1986, 3 of the original VJs left, so it was just an entirely new look for the channel. As this shift happened, it let MTV be kind of the front runner of a new type of show, reality TV. Based on a PBS documentary series in 1973, MTV's The Real World premiered in 1992.
Oh my God.
It featured a group of strangers living together and aired their interpersonal relationships. Initially, they wanted to do a scripted show around youth culture, but the cost of production was too high. So they pulled the plug on that product, and they thought it would be cheaper to just hire 7 regular people, move them into an apartment together, and record what happened.
That is honestly so funny.
Yep. It was definitely cheaper, and probably more iconic than a scripted show would have been.
Yeah.
Initial reaction was not great.
Right. Everyone's like, what the hell is this?
A review in USA Today said, quote, "Watching The Real World, which fails as documentary, too phony, and as entertainment, too dull, it's hard to tell who's using who more."
That's funny.
And the Washington Post said, quote, "Ought to be young, cute, and stupid, and to have too much free time.
Yeah.
Such is the lot facing the wayward wastrels of The Real World.
Yeah.
Something new and excruciating torture from the busy minds of MTV." End quote.
Yeah, spot on.
But audiences loved the show, and by its 3rd season, it had become a massive hit in the culture. So I'm sure you don't need me to explain to you how innovative that show was. There was absolutely nothing like it at the time. Big Brother, which is a show I would say is pretty similar, it has more of a game show aspect, but it started 8 years after The Real World.
Wow.
Survivor started 7 years after it. The only thing that was kind of like it before was a Dutch series that lasted a single season that also followed the lives of 7 strangers. But some of the most popular TV shows of the past 20 years have been basically the real world or similar format. However, this introduction of reality TV kind of spelled the death of MTV as a music television channel.
Yeah.
By the mid-1990s, most of MTV's programming had nothing to do with music. VH1 started to kind of fill in the gap with adult-oriented music programming, so MTV launched MTV2, which was the same format of their earliest days as MTV. But then MTV2 followed the same exact path of the parent channel, and by 2005 featured almost exclusively non-music related content. The MTV president at the time of this major shift said, quote, "Clearly the novelty of just showing music videos has worn off."
When was YouTube?
2004, 2005.
Okay.
So this was a little bit before
so
that.
it even like went out before YouTube.
Yeah. Clearly, he said, clearly the novelty of just showing music videos has worn off. It's required us to reinvent ourselves to a contemporary audience, end quote. In February of 2010, MTV finally dropped the music television branding. The network still wanted to occasionally air video premieres, but mostly through their website. In 2016, the new president tried to reverse some of the changes and bring back more music programming, like that's around the time that TRL relaunched, which was a huge deal. I don't know if you know what TRL is, but
I might.
it was Total Request Live.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It was that. They tried to relaunch that in
I
2016.
remember that.
Yeah, it didn't go well. I don't think it's on anymore.
Mm-hmm.
During its time, MTV revolutionized the music scene in America and really put music videos on the map. They also pioneered reality TV and other forms of youth pop culture. They also pioneered adult-focused cartoons with Beavis and Butthead. These days, you can catch them airing 8 straight hours of ridiculousness.
Oh, God.
Like, I looked up the schedule for MTV for the day that I was writing this, and you can watch Catfish for the next 2 hours, and then Ridiculousness for 4 hours, and then you take a break with a show called Siesta Key, and then Cribs for 2 hours, and then back to Ridiculousness for 10 straight hours. And as someone who grew up in a culture shaped by MTV, and a lot of my teen years were heavily focused around revolutionary MTV shows, it really hurt to go and look at their lineup and see it's just ridiculousness.
Yeah.
So whatever you think about MTV, it's hard to overstate their influence on the American music scene of the 80s and the impact that they had on the entertainment scene in general. They paved the way for a lot of the way our entertainment looks these days and featured so many iconic moments. MTV, whatever you think about it now, had a massive, lasting impact on American culture. And that's MTV.